Alright, what is up YouTube? Today we got a fighting game live action video for you guys. Yes, I know, a fighting game live action. What? Yeah, so I know I made that video a long time ago where I said I was going to be talking about fighting game live actions and, reviewing them and whatnot. And since then, yeah, I haven't really done that. I've pretty much been making just anime live action news and update videos and just different videos revolving around anime live action, but I haven't forgotten. I've really been wanting to make more fighting game live action videos, and now that I've made a set schedule where I can actually make YouTube videos consistently, I should be uploading videos a lot more consistently. That is of course assuming that I stick to that schedule and don't get depressed to the point where I shut down or want to kill myself. But anyways, yeah, so in this video I wanted to talk about Tekken, the movie. I actually recently just rewatched it and I've been meaning to write a review for it, but I never got around to it, so I'm just gonna wing it. So yeah, for this video I'm gonna be reviewing the Tekken movie, talking about some things I liked, some things I didn't like, and what I think it does as a whole for fighting game live action movies. But yeah, so let's talk about it. So in that video that I made a while back where I announced that I was going to be talking about the fighting game live action movies that exist currently and reviewing them and whatnot, yeah, I said the Tekken movie was godlike. And, upon rewatching it, I may have been wrong about that. Well, okay, I'll say this. I do think that there are parts of this movie that are godlike. Don't get me wrong, I think this movie is really good and works in a lot of ways, but there are some very obvious things about it that keep it from being truly great, and I do think this movie does really work. Both the story and tone have some really good points that hit. And yeah, it's no surprise that I actually did say the film was godlike in that other video, because there are a lot of things in this film that are godlike. Like that moment where Jin beats Law in the ring and then he gets in his face and he's like, "Respect, do you hear it?" Like, yo, I used to think that was so hard as a kid, bro. Like, oh my god. Or that one scene where Jin introduces himself to all the other Tekken fighters and then he's like, "Yo, what's up?" And then Chrissy's like, "Oh, you don't look like much." And then he's like, "You'll remember that when I win Tekken." I was like, yo, okay, my boy Jin talking that shit, okay? Like, yo, there were definitely some moments in this movie that went hard, bro. Like, oh my god. And I always thought they were really cool as a kid when I, originally watched the film and stuff. But yeah, upon rewatching it, they didn't hit as hard. And that's mainly because of John Fu's acting. To be honest, I feel like as a kid, I definitely had a huge imagination. So I may have made up for what John Fu's acting could not. But yeah, after rewatching, I feel like there's a lot of scenes in this movie where John Fu just doesn't put enough into it, he doesn't put enough emotion. Like, he's saying things, but then it's like the way it sounds, the way he did his lines are just too bland, man. Like the one scene where he's talking about the streets and how he basically has to enter Tekken or else nothing's gonna change. His lines in that moment I feel like should hit more, but the way he says them is just kind of like monotone-ish. And yeah, I don't know, his accent really isn't helping him, and it's just, I don't know, man. But yeah, I will say the evolution of Jin's character in this movie works really well, especially from the beginning to the end. Like the beginning scene where he's running away being chased by, these Tekken Corporation officials and stuff, and like he's on the run throughout the streets of the night and everything, and then ending with that final walk off as like the king, the champion of Iron Fist, and not only the Tekken Corporation is behind him, but all the people from the streets are behind him too, and it's just so godlike. I will say that ending scene is still godlike. Like, yo, I always felt like it was so cool seeing him walk off as like the king. He's still bloodied up and bruised. He's got the leather jacket hood on, like he puts it on like a fucking champ, and he just walks out, and like the streets just come after him, follow him, like Jin, like, oh my god, I still think that's so cool. Like this movie still has things about it that are just so cool. But yeah, Jin's evolution in this movie does really work, and I really like how, they gave him the hair. Like the hair really fits him. And that's another thing I will say about this movie that I think is really good, kind of underappreciated even, is the fact that for the most part, the characters are true to their iterations in the source material. For the most part. Obviously changes were made, but I feel like if we're talking about design, like for the most part, they look the part, especially for the time that this film was made, and especially considering the fact that, you know, this is a live action film from Hollywood based on a fighting game. Like, you know damn well Hollywood doesn't know jack shit about fighting games. All things considered, you know, they did an alright job. I mean, Heihachi looks like Heihachi. Like, he's not as buff as Heihachi would be, but you know, I mean, they did what they could. Raven looks very much like Raven. Yoshimitsu even is pretty true to his character as well. Steve, they changed up a bit, but to be honest, Steve in this movie really works for me. And I like that he trains Jin, and Christy, I think, is very well done, and I'm very glad to say that because Christy is my favorite character from Tekken. Oh, Christy Montero for Tekken 7, please. Even Brian Fury, they did pretty well, to be honest. The only character I will say that I'm really not happy with is Kazuya. I feel like they kind of ruined Kazuya's character. They made him into this freaking Matrix like leather jacket wearing ass. I mean, to be fair though, Kazuya does have a leather trench coat. Like, he does have that in the games. I mean, aside from that, like, Kazuya, I mean, he doesn't even look Asian. He looks Hispanic, like Hispanic Kazuya. And like, he doesn't even have the hair. Like, it's so weird because Heihachi and Jin both have hair that, you know, reflects their original designs in the game, but Kazuya doesn't, and it's just really weird. I don't know why. Also, he has a gun. That was like the main point for me where I was like, okay, yeah, Kazuya is definitely, they changed him up. They changed him up because he definitely wouldn't use a gun to exaggerate force. Like, he would have definitely done something else other than use a gun. Obviously, they didn't want to, you know, have his demon form, I guess, in this film, and they probably couldn't have afforded that because this film, the thing that really holds it back is the budget. The budget for this film is very obviously extremely low, and I think if the film had a higher budget, it could have been much better. I do feel like with what they had, they made something that was pretty decent, but you could tell that the budget wasn't great, especially from the motion graphics that the film has when, you know, they're showing the competitors that are gonna fight. You know, they just look kind of basic, to be honest. I don't think that's to say that it's because of like the time that it was made, they couldn't make something that was a little more flashy, more creative. I think it's just straight up they didn't have the budget for it. So a lot of them just look like basic, almost like film school-esque kind of cutouts when they're showing who's gonna fight who and stuff like that. Like the motion graphics and production design of like the monitors that show up and everything, and just like all the different things, like when they're in the high like VIP room to watch all the fights, it just doesn't look all that great, to be honest. Like, the production design isn't as good as it could have been with a higher budget. So it's unfortunate, but like I said, I think with what they had, they do a pretty decent job. And oh my god, Christy Montero, in this film is just oh my. Also, yeah, another thing with Kazuya was kind of weird, like when he starts banging the Williams sisters. Like, I don't know, does Kazuya do that in Tekken? Like, I don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong, but that was just something that was kind of like, I mean, is this Kazuya? But I do like the story arcs for pretty much every character in the film, and I do feel like the story arc for Kazuya's character really works. I feel like the story arc for every character really works, especially Jin's, but Kazuya's works as well, with like him wanting Tekken and Heihachi not wanting to give it to him. Like, it works. Like, for this film, for a Tekken film, it works. It's not too hard to follow, and it makes sense. And whether or not Kazuya actually went through this story in the actual Tekken series, who cares? Who cares? I feel like for this film, that story arc really works for him. And yeah, some people are gonna say like, oh, this film sucks because it's not Tekken, but like, honestly, the story of Tekken is no masterpiece, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, let's not pretend like the Tekken story has just been a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, magnum opus storytelling in every single game from the first game. Like, you know, it's not. It's really not. So I feel like that's kind of dumb and kind of lame for those people to say that, especially when this movie really does have a lot of things that work for it, and it has a lot of moments that really do hit. And honestly, like, I feel like out of the fighting game live action movies that I have seen, this is probably the best one, to be honest. The fights themselves, I feel like could have been done a lot better, but that's, I feel like, me personally speaking, because of my knowledge of fighting games and because of my knowledge as a filmmaker and because of my knowledge of fighting choreography and fight scenes, watching the best of the best, Monty Ohm and, you know, other inspirations and stuff. And of course, anime being another big factor with fight scenes that are out of this world and crazy and amazing and stuff like that. So I'm sure that at that time, with what they had, like I said, you know, they did a pretty decent job. But hey, if they hired someone like Monty Ohm, or someone, you know, who had a better understanding of like fight scenes, fight choreography, for a fighting game movie, you know, that probably would have been a better idea. But yeah, the fights in this movie, they're not like terrible. They're not the greatest, but like some of them do feel a little bit weird. And to be honest, fight scenes in most movies aren't that great to begin with. I mean, unless we're talking about like Marvel budget movies, like we're not gonna really see anything spectacular or out of this world until, you know, of course, your boy is in charge of making his own films, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, fight scenes, especially for films in this time that the film was made in, were never that great to begin with. So I can't really say that they had much to compare to, but you know, that still isn't any excuse for it to not be good or not be better, you know. They definitely could have been better, maybe with a better budget, but who knows. Sometimes, you know, budget can't fix everything, and I feel like maybe it's just the vision. The guy just didn't know how to do fight scenes, and that's totally a possibility. I'm sure whoever they got to direct this movie doesn't know anything about Tekken, had to look up everything about it just to make it, but who knows. Anything else I wanted to talk about with this movie? I will say I really did like the flashback sequences of Jin when he's fighting an opponent, and then he gets flashbacks from his mom and how she taught him how to fight and stuff. I think those sequences actually worked really, really well. And like I said, this film, like the story and the evolution of Jin's character, like there's so much about this film that really works. And I feel like, you know, a lot of other fighting game movies could take from, a lot of other anime live action movies could take from. There's a bunch of anime that have, you know, these training sequences, this flashbacks when they get into like a shonen fight and then they remember what their sensei taught them and stuff like that. Like this was one of those moments executed very well in a fighting game live action movie, and it's like, you know, no one's talking about that. No one's talking about that because I feel like most fighting game live action movies tend to follow this like tournament trend where they have to just get all these characters on the screen to fight each other in some way. So they just make a tournament or make some excuse for them to do that. But with this film, it does that in a way that does have kind of a story for almost each character, and it kind of just works. Like it flows nice and it works. And this was a great example, like with how, you know, we get shown these different things for each little fight of like, oh, his mom taught him this and that, and it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of a nice touch, you know? Like I really liked seeing that. Also, I liked how bloody the final battle got with Jin and Kazuya, and like they got axes and everything. It was like, yo, like this shit is getting intense. Like I liked that the film wasn't afraid to get a little bloody. Like that was great. Obviously we didn't get, you know, Kazuya getting thrown off the cliff as a kid, or, you know, the devil Jin or anything like that. But I mean, you gotta remember that when this film was made, you know, Tekken was in a different entry in the franchise, and there's probably a lot of things with Tekken they could have done or could have included, but you gotta remember, guys, that including too much is the prime reason why a lot of movies suck. Spider-Man 3, for example, you know, there's only so much they can do. For the most part, if they can just make something that works, cohesive story, that's all we can ask for. That's all we can ask for. Like, people love to just hate this film because everything isn't the exact same as it is in the Tekken games, and it's just like, bro, like, sometimes you just gotta appreciate it for what it is, especially if it's actually pretty decent, which I think this film is. Just be grateful that, like, Tekken has a somewhat decent movie that works, you know? But yeah, like I said, there's definitely some flaws with this film. It's not perfect, and I think they probably could have done a better job, especially with a better budget, but it is what it is. I think what we got, I'm not upset about it, and yeah, I still liked it. Of course, I have personal bias because it was like one of my movies growing up as a kid and loving to watch it and stuff, but yeah, of course, now going to film school and like being into all these things, I'm like, oh, there's so much I would change, you know what I mean? So I try to give my best review that I could, being honest, but yeah, I still think this film gets way more hate, and to be honest, A lot of it is from people that haven't even seen it, or haven't given it a chance, having an open mind and everything. So that's why I really just wanted to talk about this movie in the best light possible. But what do you guys think if you have seen the film? Definitely let me know in the comments below. Leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, that helps me out a ton. And yeah, if you guys want more fighting game live action videos like this, definitely let me know. Be sure to hit that bell, stay tuned for all the content that I'm going to be bringing you. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see y'all in the next video.